mile-per-hour serves, 5-hour marathons, and prize checks that look like lottery jackpots. But nothing prepared the sport for what unfolded under the desert sun. After playing the match of her life, muscles burning and adrenaline fading, Alexandra Eala walked toward the net ready to celebrate. The crowd was roaring until the stadium suddenly fell silent. A man stepped onto the court, not an official or a fan, but one of the wealthiest figures in the region. Taking the microphone, oil billionaire Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid looked her in the eye and made an unbelievable offer. $10 million not for sponsorship, not for a commercial deal, but for the sweat-soaked racket in her hand. It wasn't a movie scene. It was a real moment that stunned the tennis world. What began as a simple birthday wish turned into one of the most emotional scenes in sports history. On Champions Tennis, where we don't just watch the match but feel its heartbeat, the so-called $10 million racket incident became more than a headline. It was about the shocking offer, security scrambling in confusion, and a 5-second response from a young champion that proved some things in life simply cannot be bought. And to truly grasp how extraordinary it was, you first have to understand the atmosphere surrounding Eala's meteoric rise as a young Filipina star taking the tennis world by storm. A proud graduate of the Rafa Nadal Academy, Alexandra Eala has been storming up the rankings, silencing doubters, and carrying the hopes of an entire nation on her shoulders. She's no longer just a promising talent, she's a phenomenon. Arriving at the tournament, Eala was locked in, coming off a grueling season where she battled through qualifiers and fought for every single point. Even before the billionaire stepped onto the court, the match was already making headlines. She played with a ferocity rarely seen, her forehand exploding like a cannon, her movement across the court almost supernatural. She wasn't just winning, she was inspiring everyone watching, especially in the VIP box. There, Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid, a man reportedly worth over $50 billion with fleets of supercars, private islands, and a skyline shaped by his investments, watched closely. But his focus wasn't on the scoreboard. It was on his daughter, Aisha al-Rashid. To the world, she is an heiress to an oil empire. That day, she was simply a young girl with stars in her eyes. Sources close to the family revealed that Aisha had been facing personal health struggles, and during her recovery, she found comfort in watching Eala compete. She didn't just admire Eila's game, she connected with her spirit. Eila's relentless never-give-up attitude had quietly become Aisha's source of strength. Alexandra Eala crushed a final winner down the line to seal the match. The stadium erupted in thunderous applause. But inside the VIP box, Aisha al-Rashid turned to her father and whispered that for her birthday, all she wanted was to hold a piece of that magic. Most fathers might have arranged for an autograph or bought a replica jersey. But Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid was not most fathers. When the match ended, Eala shook hands with her opponent and waved to the crowd, sweat dripping from her brow, exhaustion setting in as she likely dreamed of an ice bath and recovery shake. Then, without warning, security near the players' bench parted like the Red Sea. A hush swept across the arena as the billionaire himself, dressed in immaculate traditional robes, stepped onto the court, flanked by stunned tournament officials unsure how to react. Calm but determined, he motioned for the umpire's microphone. The sound system crackled through the silent stadium. "I am a father," he began, his deep voice trembling with emotion. "And I will do anything to make my daughter happy." Eala froze, gripping her racket tightly, unsure whether this was a security breach or an unexpected ceremony. The sheik glanced toward the VIP box, where Aisha stood with her hands pressed against the glass, then turned back to the young champion. "Alexandra Eala, you are the inspiration for my daughter Aisha. I would like to offer $10 million to purchase the racket you used to win today's match." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. $10 million for a piece of graphite and string that costs a few hundred at a sporting goods store. But to him, it was not just equipment. It was a symbol of resilience and hope. Cameras zoomed in on Eila's face as she looked at the billionaire, then at the worn racket in her hand, the scratches from a hard court, the grip stained with sweat and sacrifice. 5 agonizing seconds passed. No one breathed. $10 million could change lives, build hospitals, fund careers, secure generations. Most would have handed over not just the racket, but the entire bag. But Eala didn't look at the money. She looked at the moment. Stepping toward the microphone without consulting her coach or agent, her voice steady and kind, she said, "Sir, your daughter's love for the game is worth more than any amount of money in the world." She smiled toward Aisha in the VIP box. "I cannot sell you this racket for $10 million. Because inspiration should not be bought." Alexandra Eala continued, her voice calm, "but powerful. It should be shared." Then instead of walking away, she moved toward the edge of the court beneath the VIP box and motioned for Aisha to come down. Security hesitated for a split second before carefully lifting the young girl over the railing. Eala knelt to meet her at eye level. "This is for you," she said softly, placing the racket into Aisha al-Rashid's trembling hands. "You promised to keep fighting, just like I do." Aisha, the daughter of Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid, a girl who could have anything money could buy, burst into tears. She threw her arms around Eala, sobbing into the champion's shoulder. Behind them stood the powerful sheikh, a titan of industry, wiping his own eyes, visibly humbled. The crowd didn't just applaud, they wept. A standing ovation thundered through the stadium for nearly 10 minutes, echoing far beyond the court. The moment has since exploded across social media because it struck a nerve in a cynical world. Modern sports often feel like pure business, where loyalty carries a price tag and athletes are treated as assets. When the sheikh offered $10 million, he was operating by the logic he understood: everything has a price. If you want something rare, you pay for it. But Eala's refusal wasn't simply about rejecting money, it was about redefining value. By turning down the offer, her values her and believes in her not because of money, but because of heart and passion. Social media erupted, dubbing the moment the billion-dollar reject. Hashtags like #IlaEffect and #Priceless began trending worldwide. Commentators joked that Alexandra Eala had just made the worst business decision of her life, but the greatest brand decision imaginable. And was it really bad business? In truth, Eala may have done something far more powerful than cashing a check. She positioned herself as a global ambassador of integrity and kindness, something no endorsement deal can manufacture. Brands don't just seek champions, they seek icons. And in that unforgettable moment, she became one. The story, however, didn't end with that tearful embrace. The ripple effects are still spreading across the tennis world and beyond. To fully understand why her gesture resonated so deeply, you have to look at her journey. A graduate of the Rafa Nadal Academy, Eala's rise has been defined by discipline, resilience, and belief, qualities instilled from a young age. Born in the Philippines and carrying the dreams of a nation hungry for a global tennis star, her path has never been easy. That's precisely why giving away the racket meant so much. She understood what it means to fight for opportunity, to draw strength from inspiration, and to chase a dream that sometimes feels bigger than yourself. Born in the Philippines, Alexandra Eala has had to fight for every opportunity. She left home at a young age to train in Spain at the Rafa Nadal Academy, sacrificing time with family and friends to pursue her dream. Along the way, she dealt with injuries, funding challenges, and the immense pressure of carrying a nation's hopes in a sport largely dominated by wealthier countries with deeper infrastructure. In recent months, her steady climb up the WTA rankings has captured the attention of tennis legends. Her explosive baseline game, paired with tactical maturity beyond her years, has drawn comparisons to established stars. Just weeks before the now-famous incident, she stunned a top 20 opponent, making it clear she was no longer just a promising prospect, she was a genuine threat. Back home, the Filipino tennis community has rallied behind her in extraordinary fashion. Viewing parties fill venues across Manila whenever she competes, and children are picking up rackets because of her influence. She isn't simply chasing ranking points, she's inspiring a generation. That's why her decision to give away the racket felt so powerful. For someone who understands sacrifice and the value of every dollar, who has seen firsthand how hard her family worked to support her journey, turning down $10 million wasn't just generous, it was transformative. It reminded the world that some athletes still see their platform as something bigger than personal wealth. And the story didn't end there. Reports suggest that Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid was so moved by her gesture that he pledged the same $10 million not to buy memorabilia but to support youth sports development in the Philippines in Eala's name. While not officially confirmed, sources close to the family claim he intends to fund tennis facilities in underserved communities, providing equipment and coaching to children who might otherwise never touch a racket. If realized, Eala's 5-second decision could spark a legacy far greater than any private fortune. Instead of enriching one individual, it could open doors for thousands of young athletes, turning a single act of kindness into a nationwide movement. Instead of one racket gathering dust in a private collection, entire tennis courts could rise across the Philippines. That's the multiplication of generosity, the kind of math that changes nations. The Philippine Tennis Association has reportedly reached out to representatives of Sheikh Khalid Al Rashid to explore potential partnerships, and coaches around the country are buzzing with hope. Former Filipino players have even offered their time and expertise should the proposed foundation come to life. As for Aisha, she was seen leaving the stadium clutching the racket like it was the crown jewels. Witnesses say she refused to let security carry it, holding it tightly against her chest during the ride home, glancing down at it in disbelief. That worn grip and scuffed frame may now be one of the most meaningful pieces of tennis memorabilia in the Middle East, not because of its material value, but because it couldn't be bought. It represents something even billions cannot purchase: genuine human connection. A hero acknowledging that she matters not for her last name, but for her own spirit. The Sheikh himself has remained unusually quiet online, but those close to him say the moment left a lasting mark. Here is a man accustomed to billion-dollar negotiations, to boardrooms where fortunes shift with a signature, to acquiring almost anything he desires. For perhaps the first time in decades, he faced something beyond the reach of wealth, and instead of reacting with frustration, he responded with humility. He was reminded that love, inspiration, hope, and dignity exist outside any marketplace. And what about Alexandra Eala? She walked off the court the same way she had walked on, humble, composed, and focused on the next challenge. When reporters crowded around her in a mixed zone, asking her to explain the viral moment, she simply smiled and said, "Some things are just for the heart." She refused to turn it into a spectacle, choosing instead to let the gesture speak for itself. She didn't preview the gesture on Instagram. She didn't ask her management team to draft a statement. Alexandra Eala simply acted on instinct, guided by values shaped long before she ever competed on the professional stage. That authenticity is precisely why the moment resonated so deeply, and the days since the incident, her social media following has surged by more than 2 million across platforms. Messages of admiration have poured in from countries without even a professional tennis circuit, proving that her impact transcended the SP.